but I'm going to go ahead and start our program this morning. And I want to acknowledge first the perseverance and dedication of the three candidates for the office of sheriff, because they've been in a marathon session of community forums already. And I also want to thank the League of Women Voters and the NAACP for their excellent online forums that they've had for these candidates already. I think we'll have the most informed electorate as possible as we head into the elections on August 4th. Generally, we introduce a speaker, but because of the format today, the speakers will be introducing themselves. And at this time, I'd like to ask if there are any announcements from the members. If there are, you can unmute yourself and make your announcement. Wave your hand if you'd like to be recognized. I think we have an all clear, so I'm going to go ahead and ask Amanda to show the lit chalice, and I'm going to do this special reading for this morning. As most of you know, last Friday night, Congressman John Lewis passed away at the age of 80, leaving behind a legacy of activism and service that will echo for generations to come. He was born in Troy, Alabama, the son of sharecroppers, and was arrested over 40 times in his lifelong leadership of those seeking justice for all in our time. Can you show that chalice, Amanda? His zeal for justice was only matched by his capacity for compassion. He sat in for justice and stood up for equality. He marched for jobs and wrote for freedom. The last living speaker from the March on Washington, he provided a bridge from how far we have come and a roadmap to where we need to be. Congressman Lewis never failed to remind us of our moral obligation towards one another. He lived his life acting on behalf of those facing injustice and oppression and encouraged us to do the same. From the streets of Selma to the houses of representatives, where he was known as the conscience of the Congress. On the crisp Sunday morning, when he set foot on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, he knew what lay ahead. He understood that racism's fists and segregation's billy clubs would very well beat him to within an inch of his life. And if he survived, he would likely wake up in jail. But he stepped forward anyway, knowing full well the carnage that awaited him. He sacrificed himself so his country and the one he loved so dearly could one day be worthy of such an act. The words of our Constitution may have been written by revolutionists in 1780, but they were given meaning by a revolutionary in 1965. So with that, we'll proceed with the rest of our program. Certainly, John Lewis was a giant in his own time. I'd like to call your attention again to Barbara, if you want to show us those flowers once more. And also, Mary Beth has beautiful flowers up. And thank you, ladies, both. And let's focus on those as we go to joys and concerns. If you have a joy or concern you'd like to share with us this morning, please raise your hand. Brad, do you have one? Okay. Barbara Johnston, please.
Yeah, a joy is that I received a letter from Rachel Hampton, and she's an inmate in the Topeka Correctional Facility. And if anybody wants to write to her, I'm sure she'd like to hear from you. Anyway, it was nice to hear from her, and I'll continue communicating with her.
Thank you. I'm going to switch screens here for a minute, see if anyone else has a hand coming up. I have a joy that my nephew's doing much better these days, and I'm proud and happy to be able to say that. Um, if we were all together, would light one more candle for the joys and concerns in our hearts but left unspoken, and we can retain them in our hearts, even though we're not lighting a candle this morning. Now we'll stay in group view, and I will ask every candidate to do a 2-minute opening statement, and then we'll proceed to questions. They'll each be allowed 2 minutes to answer and 1 minute to rebuttal. We have some questions that have been submitted by our membership already, and others that were put together by Penny in consultation with others. And I should mention the words about John Lewis came from multiple sources that I combined last night. Democrat Party, Citizens United, and others. So now I'd like to again start by asking the candidates in turn to introduce themselves with an opening statement. And we'll start with Captain Doug Woods.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for allowing us to have this morning, and everybody taking time out of their busy schedule to become be a better educated voter about what's going on today in our elections process. My name is Doug Woods, and I'm running for sheriff of Douglas County. I've been with the sheriff's office for 33 years. I've worked there my entire adult life. Rex Johnson hired me at the age of 18. I'm not sure why he did, but he did, and I appreciate that he did hire me at the age of 18. Throughout my career, I've been a corrections officer for about 2 or 3 years, and I was a corrections supervisor. In 1991, I was selected to be a patrol deputy, and I went to the academy and graduated from the Lawrence Police Academy in late 1991. Spent 2 to 3 years on patrol. After being on patrol for a few years, I was selected to go to the drug enforcement unit. Did that just short of 2 years. After that, I went back to patrol for a short period of time. I was selected to be a patrol supervisor. In those days, we called them patrol corporals. They've since been, the rank's been since changed to a sergeant. After being on patrol as a supervisor for a couple of months, I was selected to be a detective. That's where I really liked, that was really what I wanted to do my career. I wanted to be a detective. I was a detective just about 8 years, worked mostly person crimes. After Sheriff McGovern was elected, he promoted me to lieutenant. That rank has been restructured to a captain's rank. So I've supervised as a captain or a division commander. I've supervised the patrol division. I've supervised both divisions at the jail, the operations and the administrative division. And I'm currently the administrative captain over at the downtown building. And basically what that means is I supervise all of our detectives. We have 4 detectives in our office, a civilian employee who does computer work, have one detective that does a drug unit, another deputy that's been assigned to the drug unit. I also supervise our internal affairs division, our warrants division, the court security and civil process division, as well as the dive team. Anything that kind of falls under investigations, that's what I'm supervising right now.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to Lieutenant Armbruster.
Thank you, and thanks again for being informed. As Doug said, I think this is an unprecedented local election in certainly in my life, and I don't know that I've ever heard of another one so hotly contested, especially as a primary. But I really appreciate everybody wanting to get to know us a little bit better. I was born and raised right here in Lawrence, Kansas. My parents retired from LMH and Hallmark Cards, respectively. Excuse me. I graduated from Baldwin High in 1994 and went down to Pitt State and played a little football and got a degree. Came home and realized I didn't want to use my degree anymore, so I went to work for the sheriff's office in the jail. Sheriff Anderson hired me, and I worked in what we call the old jail down at 11th and Mass. It was right about the time we were building this new jail, which has now been open for about 22 years and 21 years. So I got promoted to deputy and went to the academy and spent 11 years on patrol, where I made supervisor as well. And then I got selected to become a detective, where I spent 7 years working not only person crimes, but one of my main areas of investigations were traffic collisions, as well as child sex crimes and just any sex crimes. So, and we'll talk more, hopefully, about mental health, because I'm a PTSD survivor from this job, cumulative stress disorder, and I bring a very unique perspective when it comes to that. Since then, I've been promoted up to lieutenant, where I am currently a shift commander at the jail. I supervise about 15 or 16 people on my shift, but I'm also in charge of our peer support, where it's my job to make sure that everybody's mental health is being taken care of within the agency for the first responders and stuff like that. I really thank everybody for coming out. I'm an open book. I want to do this job. I want to be your next sheriff, because I believe that I'm the best opportunity to move the law enforcement and the criminal justice system from a sheriff's perspective into the future. So I really look forward to answering questions.
Okay, now we'll ask Gene Riles to tell us a little about himself and his co-runner, Mr. Flory. Please go ahead, Gene.
Good morning and thank you. My name is Clark Riles Sr. I'm sitting in for Sheriff candidate Del Flory this morning, who cannot attend today's forum due to a scheduling conflict. Del deeply regrets that he could not attend this forum this morning. If elected sheriff, Dale has chosen me to become his undersheriff. I was born and raised in Lawrence, Kansas. I grew up in North Lawrence with 12 wonderful brothers and sisters. I've been working for the sheriff's office for 28 years. I worked in the old jail that was located downtown at 111 East 11th. I first became a supervisor in 1994 and climbed my way through the ranks. I have supervised the corrections division, the patrol division, and I currently hold the rank of lieutenant and supervise the training division. I'm also part of this and supervise the accident reconstruction team. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, I would like to offer each of the candidates another minute to say anything in rebuttal or in addition to their original statement, and we'll continue on in the cycle. Doug, and then Jay, and then Gene. Doug?
Yes, sir. Just a couple other things about me. I've been a person that's been extremely involved in our community prior to campaigning. I've been involved with the Ballard Community Center. I do bigs and what they call Big Brothers, Big Sisters, bigs in schools. I'm involved in the law enforcement torch run for Special Olympics, coordinated that for the past 10 years. I also started a program about 10 years ago at the Ballard Center called Toys. It's called Take Our Youth Shopping, where we take the at-risk kids or the underprivileged kids from Ballard Christmas shopping every year. We try to create a positive interaction with law enforcement and young kids, and we raise money in Lawrence and the the Lawrence Police Department, the Sheriff's Department, KU Police Department, the Highway Patrol. We usually 20 to 30 officers show up to meet the 20 to 30 kids, eat breakfast with them, kind of get to know them, get them to trust. Seeing these people in uniform can be a little scary, and then we take them Christmas shopping for their families. And it's not one of those big, those community involvement programs that I've been involved in. I've been involved in a lot of community programs over my career.
Thank you, Doug. Jay?
Oh, I don't really have anything to add. I think I feel like I need to help educate to a certain degree in that when you get your ballot, and many of you probably already have your ballot, hopefully, there's only going to be one name on the ballot, and it's the sheriff. And so I just want everybody to understand that both Captain Woods and I have what we call an undersheriff selection as well. But we are not bound by any rule or anything that says that person, it's not like the vice president where it's a package deal. So Stacy Simmons, Captain Simmons would be my selection as undersheriff. And she is an absolute, the perfect person for me, and she would make a great undersheriff. But I want to make sure that everybody understands that the person that you're voting for would be the three candidates. It would be myself, Captain Woods, and Deputy Flory. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. And Gene, would you like to add something?
Just a little bit. As far as being out in the community, I just want to add that I have done some work in the local schools, the junior high level, with Conversation Piece, where I get out and I try to mentor the kids in the schools and encourage them to be empowered and just let them know that they can be anything that they put their hearts to it, whether it's law enforcement, doctors, nurses, lawyers, whatever they desire. And yes, I do appreciate Lieutenant Armbruster bringing that out. When you do go to the polls, you're not going to see my name on the ballot. So make sure you vote. If you want to vote for Del Flory and I, make sure you vote under the Flory, because my name will not be on that ballot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Speaking from the perspective of a white guy in his 80s, it seems to me that our sheriff and police departments interact very well with our community. And during the events here in Lawrence after the George Floyd's assassination in Minnesota, I think that things like crowd control and police reaction were appropriate, but I can only say that from my viewpoint. And I wonder if there are people in our community who feel that these events have spiked tensions between the public and law enforcement, and what steps you would like to take to regain public trust. And this time we'll start with Jay and then go to Gene and finally Doug. Jay?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that it's created a much more tenuous relationship between the law enforcement and the community. While I do agree with your assessment that I feel like our community, while they did protest and occupy Massachusetts Street, it was mostly peaceful, and I applaud the police department for allowing them the room to do that and putting up the safety barriers and doing, when they attempted to clean the street and all that, maybe some things got out of hand, and hopefully that we learned a few lessons on how to better handle that next time. But overall, I've been very impressed with the community as well as the law enforcement. I just feel like the spike in the relationship and the tension is simply because of the national media and the national attention that these other places are getting. And we see, you look at what's going on in Portland right now, and I don't even understand what's going on up there with these unmarked officers and with unmarked vehicles. Maybe there's a legitimate reason, but I sure don't see it. And so it's things like that we have to work at a local level to regain and keep what trust we do have by showing them exactly what it is and communicating what it is we need to do and what it is we hope to do, and not show up as a surprise, basically.
Thank you. Gene?
Yes, and thank you. Yeah, it was quite interesting, a different site that I've never seen before here in Douglas County. And I thought our interaction with the public was pretty decent. I was downtown at 11th and Mass after the riot or the protest that started at City Hall and ended up in the South Park. And I handed out bottles of water to the community and got a lot of thank yous. Got a couple of stares and glares, but no one really was derogatory towards the staff that I was next to or myself, with the exception just maybe a couple of people. But I thought things went really well, and that's just a part of being able to communicate with our citizens in our community, and hopefully we can continue that and gain some respect and knowledge of everybody's point of views in a peaceful situation. Thank you.
Doug?
Was being one of the planners for both of the events that we've had here recently in Douglas County and Lawrence. I think we did do a really good job in speaking to the event that started at City Hall and the march that went down Massachusetts Street. We've been really fortunate in Lawrence and Douglas County. We typically have very peaceful, law-abiding protests. And, there's always a few hiccups here and there with some of them. But I think that goes a long ways with what law enforcement does and how law enforcement reacts to these, to the protest. If you notice in some other communities, you see the officers lined up along the with their helmets on and their shields and their batons and stuff like that. You don't see that in Lawrence, Kansas. We don't want to be out there on the street looking like we want a confrontation. We want people's voice to be heard. We want people to protest and, you know, be heard, you know, as long as we do it reasonably and legally. And, you know, one of the issues that happened during the first protest, there was a lot of graffiti that was painted on the courthouse and the sheriff's office. Some very vulgar stuff was painted on the building. And one of the district court judges asked the following morning, how many people did we arrest out of that? We didn't arrest anybody for painting the building. You know, and you look at the big scale of things, painting some vulgar language on the building is pretty minuscule to what's going on. And if that's what people need to do to get their voice out, is to paint, you know, bad symbols on our buildings and cuss words on our buildings, okay, we can clean the building, we can do that, but it's not worth, you know, a confrontation over some spray paint. Allowing people to have their voice. You know, we didn't have any broken windows, we didn't have anything like that. But what we did have is, after a while, most of the protesters went home. And what we found was, we were some folks from out of town that, and at one point I know we were looking at some people that were hollering things like, the downtown business owners have insurance, let's burn it down. That's the kind of things we can't have going on. Luckily, that didn't, you know, it didn't occur. We didn't have any fires or anything like that. But I think, you know, another incident where we were watching some people, they picked up some rocks and they were going to throw them through the windows. Some protesters actually stopped these other people from breaking windows. So, I mean, it was a good protest.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's go to the next question, if we may. And this one concerns body cameras. I'd like each of you to give us your opinion on body cameras. And we'll start with Jean this time.
My opinion and Dell's opinion are the same as on body cameras. We are 100% for body cams. It can hold officers accountable for their actions. It can get them out of situations for false accusations or false claims. We're 100% for them. Thank you.
Next would be Jay, and then Doug.
I too am very much for body cams, and what the folks need to understand though is that the cost of the cameras can be substantial. It's not the cost of the equipment that's going to be so that's been prohibitive up to this point. It's the data storage. So we work 12-hour shifts, and you know, we have our warrants division, our patrol division, our court security division, and as well as our corrections division, the people working in the housing units that could really benefit from these cameras. But you're going to have 12 hours of high definition data from up to 20 to 25 or 30 officers per day. And then you double that, and you double that because you have 2 12-hour shifts working. So you could have 40 to 50 officers with 12 hours of information that would need to be stored for up to a year, if not longer. So the data storage is going to be a huge undertaking as well as expense. But with that being said, that is something I'm absolutely going to invest in.
Thank you. I thought that the body cams were only turned on when the encounter developed, and I'd ask any of you to raise your hand and tell me if I'm wrong.
So there's different styles. Some places the camera comes on at the beginning of your shift and it does not turn off until the end of your shift. So you have some privacy issues, in my opinion, as far as even just going to the bathroom or going home, talking on the phone with your wife. Some of the newer ones, though, do operate as our cameras in our cars, where it's constantly recording, but if nothing happens, that stuff can drop off. But I'm not sure that's exactly how we want to do it, because sometimes the most innocuous things that could maybe get dropped off and not recorded may be the things that we actually need. So I think the body cameras would end up being something that would just be on most all of the time, or if not all of the time. I'll let the others chime in as well. They may have some better information than me.
Thank you. Doug, you raised your hand.
Oh, yeah, it basically depends on what kind of a system you buy and what you're willing to invest in. And good points there. It would be a huge expense because as you talk about, you have even 8 hours of video, and you have, Douglas County on a good night for patrol has maybe 5 people working, sometimes 6, sometimes 7, but you don't work with less than 5 people. So you take 5 people times 8 to 10 to 12 hours of video, depending on what's going on, how busy they are. The cameras themselves are not that expensive, but you have to store that data, and it's not a data storage issue that can be stored for 30 days or 60 days. Typically, we store that data for at least a year. So a server of that size is rather expensive. But yeah, some different cameras, you can program the cameras to how they turn on, when they turn on. Do they turn on when you activate your lights? Do they activate when you get out of your car? Some I've even heard will activate if you pull your taser out of its holster, or if you pull your gun out of its holster. But I'm 100% for body cameras. I think it's a necessity. It gives us more transparency. It helps us investigate both criminal actions and any complaints that we might get, as well as giving our supervisors the opportunity to do checks on our folks about what their interactions are with the public, or what their interactions are with inmates, even if there's not a complaint.
Thank you. Gene?
Yeah, just to add a little bit to that. Yeah, when you the cameras can come on when you activate your emergency lights, and or if you're in a situation and you're out just walking the streets, you can actually activate your camera from your person on your body. So if you're walking downtown and you run into an altercation or something, some event, you can actually activate it. And like Jay said, the continuous running of the body cam is something that we really have to consider, because if you run into a situation and you don't activate your camera, then that can be costly towards you. Like, why didn't you activate your camera? Or you're trying to hide something. So it definitely, we have to establish some type of policy when and how long those cameras are going to run. Thank you.
Thank you. I have my next question now is, I should say, in the middle of the country, you think this might not come up, but the question is, how does the sheriff's office currently interact with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and what, if any, changes do you recommend for that interaction? And I believe this time it goes back to Doug to start.
Well, typically our interaction with ICE is very limited, and when we're not out actively looking for folks. We're not out actively helping immigration and customs agents look for people in Douglas County. How it works is if an individual is arrested, that individual's fingerprints are taken at the jail, and that's something we have to do for everybody that's arrested. Those fingerprints are submitted to the FBI. The FBI sends those fingerprints to Immigration and Customs Agency, and they run those fingerprints on their own. If the Immigration and Customs Agency decides they want to put a hold on someone because of their status in our country, they will send us a hold notice for that individual. Once that individual's court case is completed or they're going to be released, we call the Immigration and Customs Agency to let them know the individual is going to be released from our custody. They have a certain amount of time, I believe it's 48 hours, to come and get that person or release the hold on them. If they don't come within 48 hours to get the individual, we release them. But we're not actively working with them. I guess kind of a misconception with a lot of people that we're out looking for that. We don't do that. We don't have time to do that. But that's how people end up with getting immigration holds on them, is through the FBI's fingerprint database.
Thank you. Jay?
Yeah, and in fact, over the last few years, we've had several situations with ICE and their detainers. What they like to do is they'll get those fingerprints, as Captain Woods mentioned, and just call them and say, hey, we want to put a detainer on this person. And for a while, we were allowing that. But then it got to be the point where they weren't actually signing a warrant. They weren't putting anything into our national database called NCIC. That is actually some form of a criminal warrant. So we finally got to the point here a while back where we just told them, either get a warrant or this person is going to be on their way. And so they grumbled, of course, but that's been our largest, but they do it now. And we won't keep people until they put something on paper for a criminal case or criminal warrant. But as far as, the actual boots on the ground, assisting with ICE on their raids and stuff, that's not something the sheriff's office typically would assist with. It would only be in a situation where if they called and needed assistance, especially maybe an emergency assistance, and we would never not respond to somebody who needs help, but we don't actively participate in the raids. And we certainly wouldn't moving forward in my administration.
Thank you. Gene?
Well, I really don't have anything to add. I mean, I think they both nailed it. The only thing I could possibly add is when we do the fingerprints, we have a system that automatically will send those fingerprints. And sometimes we have to ink roll them, which is manual fingerprints. And those we have to physically send to the FBI. But everything, the normal fingerprints are just automatically sent over. But yeah, they pretty much covered it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. This is one that might be a tough one. And it is, what do you feel are the top 3 problems facing the sheriff's office, and how would you address them? And I think it's, who's up next? Okay, we'll go Jay, and then Gene, and then Doug.
Okay, top 3 problems facing the sheriff's office. Well, number 1 is obviously, 1 and 2 are very easy. Number 1 is obviously the current environment we find ourselves in with the murder of George Floyd back on May 25th. And so I think that we've moved past the anger phase, and we're moving into the how do we fix this and move forward phase. And so I think luckily the sheriff's office has such a good community relationship and a mutual respect with the community that we haven't suffered a lot of backlash, but we also know that we are being held by just a razor thin margin. And so we know that we need to really double down and earn that trust and respect and keep it where it's at. Number 2 would be the pandemic, obviously. We house today's, we've got 128 today in our jail, with another 14 or 15 to out of county and other housing units. So the second we get a pandemic case in our jail, it's going to turn this entire place on its ear. We've done a fantastic job of mitigating that and keeping it out of our facility. But that's something that is constantly on our mind. Third, I think with the other local elections, the sheriff's office is facing a certain amount of uncertainty as to who is elected to certain positions, because there's been a lot of the defund the police talk, and a lot of promises made to take money away from law enforcement, and sheriff's office is the largest budget of the county. We're almost $16 million. Of that, 87% is personnel. So if you cut our money, we're going to have to lay people off. And that is absolutely something that I just can't, nobody wants to do. And I really don't want to do it.
Thank you. Who's next? Okay, Gene.
Okay. In addition, I think some of our concerns are staffing. Our staffing numbers are low. Well, considering if we have the jail expansion or not, but staffing is a nightmare, trying to keep staff, retain staff, and hire staff in. Community trust, that's a concern right now. We've lost a little bit of community trust over the George Floyd incident. And I lost my chain of thought here a second. The staffing, the trust of the community, and the diversity in our agency is a concern, or I wouldn't necessarily a problem, but concerns on the people of color in our agency is a concern in our front offices. And yeah, I really can't think of any major problems, but just concerns that I have. And hopefully we can address some of those moving forward.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to move on to the next question. And oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Sorry, Doug. Go ahead.
I appreciate that. Well, I'll echo some of the sentiments there. I think one of the first things we really have to do, our biggest issue, is our community relations, how law enforcement interacts with folks. You know, the George Floyd deal was another one of many issues that have come to light. He was one of the most recent issues, but we have to do a better job as law enforcement of earning the community trust. That each time another incident happens, we lose more community trust. We have to be doing a better job as law enforcement. We have to be out there. We have to be, more approachable, understanding what is going on in our community from our different groups in our community is extremely important. And I think we all have to do those things within the sheriff's office and as the general public. I mean, everybody in this room right now needs to understand everybody else's point of view. We may not always agree with it, but we have to understand where people are coming from and what their ideals are and those kinds of things. I think a second thing that's really a problem for the sheriff's office is whether or not we get jail expansion. My position on this is I don't have a position on whether we expand the jail or not. As the sheriff by law has to have a jail. And there are certain things we have to do as the sheriff when we have a jail. We have to take care of the inmates, their basic needs. We can't just open up the door and kick 50 or 60 people out of the door. Would we love to do that? Heck yeah. But we have to take care of their medical needs. We have to take care of their mental health needs. We have programs at the jail that, the reentry program. We have Burt Nash Mental Health Services at the jail. We have DECA for substance abuse issues at the jail. These are all things that go into our jail expansion or non-jail expansion. If we don't expand the jail, we're going to, and our numbers spike after the COVID issue. I mean, the CJCC expects our population to be well over, almost double, in a few months. I hope that doesn't happen, but if it does, we're going to have to be farming people out at other jurisdictions again, or housing them in other jurisdictions. That means they're not getting to see their families. They're not getting to be part of our programs. They don't even get to see their lawyers on a regular basis. The third biggest issue.
Thank you. Those comments lead us directly into our next question, and we'll go with Gene, Jay, and then Doug on this question, which is simply, how do you stand on jail expansion? Does the county need to enlarge the jail? What are the pros and cons? And let's go ahead, Gene.
Myself, I am against the jail expansion, and I'll read a quote from Sheriff candidate Dale Flory. Dale, he writes here, he applauds the county commission for revisiting the jail expansion topic. I am opposed to expanding the jail at this time. The nearly 30 million expansion is better to serve investing in social services, affordable housing, education, food, subsidized health care, job training. Expansion would need 60 additional officers to staff. The current staffing is a challenge. We don't want to see an expanded jail, then not enough staff to operate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jay?
So my position is that when the pandemic hit, the courts were able to just basically jettison 40, 50, 60 people right out of our jail. And I don't think the county commission realized that that was even a possibility. We didn't know they could do that. So my position is if we can keep our jail population where it's at right this second, I do not want a bigger jail. In fact, I hope that we can even reduce our jail population further. However, I can never say that jail expansion would never be a topic of discussion moving forward, because if our jail population spikes again to the numbers that it was, much less even more than where they were, it has to be at least somewhere in the discussion. There are studies being done. A lot of these studies are bringing us new programs, but those are slow money, what I call slow money programs. And while very valuable, It's kind of like if your house is on fire, you don't start building a water retention ditch, so that way we can have water when your house catches on fire. We can't work in slow money and expect it to help us right this second. So I do have a lot of ideas about how to reallocate space within our current facility that would really, really help our bed numbers, because 77 of our beds are not behind doors or not behind locks. And also with the pandemic, we have got to figure out something for a quarantine unit so we can put people somewhere for 72 hours, if not a little longer, to keep them away from general population and make sure that they're healthy enough to go into these housing units. So I have ideas. It's not a jail expansion, but it's more of a reallocation of our current spaces.
Thank you. And back to you, Doug.
I'll kind of repeat what I said earlier. We don't get to choose as a sheriff. When I'm the sheriff, I don't get to choose who comes to our jail, when they come to our jail, how long they're in our jail, and when they get released. Those are all things that are out of the sheriff's power. Those are issues that are controlled by the district attorney's office and the courts and the legislature. So, as I said, we're going to play the cards we're dealt. And whether it happens or not, it is what it is. But we're going to do the best we can for the inmates that we have in our jail. If we have to house other inmates in other jails, if our population spikes again, that's what we'll do. But we have to look at those issues when they do that. We have lots of programs that our inmates can take part of to help them when they get back into the community, or they can help them with substance abuse issues, or they can help them with mental health issues. But understand, when we send folks to other jails for housing, they don't get to take part in these programs. We don't send folks to other jails who may have medical or severe medical issues. We don't send folks to other jails who have mental health issues. The other jails in the state that are willing to house our inmates, they want our best or easiest managed inmates. So that's what we're doing. So those are the folks who are eligible for a lot of these programs and need these programs to help them when they get out of jail. We're not able to necessarily do those things. Another thing is, if we are going to house people, say down at Butler County, where we have sent a lot of inmates, they don't get to see their families, their friends. They can't come out and see them. They don't get to see their lawyers. If you are being housed in Butler County and you had court this week, say you had court on Thursday, we're probably going to go to Butler County and pick you up Tuesday or Wednesday. That gives your lawyer a very limited amount of time to come out and discuss those issues with you. And that's another problem that we have. Can we move this along faster if the lawyers are able to meet with their clients on a regular basis or easier basis? And there's some things that we have in place. We're working on some video visitation stuff and video where the lawyers would be able to talk to their inmates or their clients. But those are the types of things we're trying to work on.
Thank you. This situation with the tragic death of George Floyd and the equally tragic pandemic we're dealing with now, opioids have more or less been forced into the background or forgotten. But I'll ask Gene, Jay, and then Doug to answer this question. Are opioids much of a factor in enforcement throughout the county at the present time? Gene?
Yes, opioids are definitely a major concern right here in just Douglas County alone. It's unfortunately it's an addiction that a lot of people have that was unwarranted. May have started off with just a broken leg or something, and 5 days later they're hooked on pain meds. But yeah, it's a definitely concern throughout Douglas County and the nation.
Thank you, Jay.
No, I think that's definitely the case. I think the national attention has been drawn to the doctors who've been overprescribing for so long, and I feel like we have kind of a grip on that as a nation. However, what we're dealing with now are these medications, and fentanyl is the main one coming up from Mexico and stuff. And I can't express how dangerous fentanyl is. I mean, you get it on your skin and it will just lay you down. And so we now carry all the deputies, as well as the jail deputies and jail officers. We carry the the Narcan spray because it's such a situation. And you look at the overdoses within our community, they're very, very prevalent, not to take away from the methamphetamine and the heroines and all that stuff, but opioids are just so much simpler to get. And it's definitely a problem. It's something that our drug unit and our task force need to really kind of probably work on. If they're not already, I'm sure they are, because I'm not a part of that, but I can only assume that that's something that they concentrate on. And I think it's a national problem, but we definitely have to solve it locally if we can.
Thank you. Doug?
Yes, the opioids are a huge problem in Douglas County. I supervise the drug unit, but it's just it's one of many problems when it comes to drugs. If you have an opioid issue and let's say you can't get that and you have an addiction issue and you can't get that, now we have heroin has become more prevalent in our community, and that's become a huge problem again. And then you also have our methamphetamine problem. So you basically take those three things. Marijuana is not a big issue anymore, but the opioids, the heroin issues, and the methamphetamine issues, a lot of the people that are being arrested in our community have some sort of a substance abuse issue. And most likely it's one of those big three, the opioids, the methamphetamine, or the heroin. And they're either under the influence of one of those substances at the time of their arrest, or are they out committing additional crimes so they can buy more of those substances? That's where one of our biggest problem is. It's the addicted users where a lot of our issues lie. We are, as a drug enforcement unit, as law enforcement, we're looking for the dealers, because if you're looking only at the substance abusers or the part-time users, the part people have a problem, that's a problem, but that's not necessarily a law enforcement problem. That's a societal problem. Where can we get more counseling? Those types of things. Where all those issues that go into drug addiction, our focus needs to be on the dealers and where the dealers are getting their amounts from.
Thank you. That leads into our next question that was submitted. In the line of duty, officers might encounter people with mental health or addiction problems. Is the current training on mental health and addiction problems adequate? And we'll go Jay, Gene, and Doug.
So I think that there are people who go to school and receive doctorates who do not have enough training when it comes to crisis intervention and people who are having a mental health crisis. So it only stands to reason that our 4 or 8 hours of crisis training and dealing with mental health is inadequate. So, we find ourselves as law enforcement dealing with all of society's most basic social justice issues, especially mental health is one of the main ones, in that these people are not criminals. They are suffering from mental health crises. And some of these people are so mentally unhealthy that you can't even call them a criminal. They don't have that intent, but yet we send our deputies and our police officers to deal with these people, and it's a volatile situation. So no, the training is not enough, but we really need to start leaning on the experts. The police department has their crisis team and their mental health team that go out together with a mental health counselor or some sort of Susan Hadel is her name, as one of them, and she's just awesome. We need about 50 more Susan Hadels to go with us on these calls to help us and to handle these cases not in a criminal way, but in the manner that they are, and that is a mental health crisis.
Thank you. Next.
Yeah, I have another quote here from Dale. As far as the mental health, Dale wants to expand the treatment programs as an alternative to incarceration. Dale will establish a Douglas County Sheriff's Office co-responder unit that pairs with CIT trained deputies with a mental health clinic. And basically the mental health, as far as the training that we have now, yes, we need a lot more of that. The corrections staff, they see a lot more mental health concerns within the jail than the normal, like, local police officer or the sheriff's deputy that's out on the street. because a lot of the mental health is inside the jail. So they get firsthand experience dealing with those concerns. And so they're betterly prepared for it, but still they need a lot more training with that. Like they can take their experience from the jail and use that experience out on the street if they ever get out to be patrol deputies, versus like someone who's never experienced the mental health being straight to the streets. But yeah, we definitely need a lot more training in that area, and we're looking forward to get that done. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to have an opportunity for each candidate. Oops, go ahead, Doug.
You keep making me go last and forget about me, sir. I agree with what's been said. We have a mental health crisis going on. We actually have, and I believe we have a substance abuse crisis going on. And I think we have to look at all those issues. And do we need more training? Of course, we need more training. We have to be able to deal with these different situations. And then if you combine someone who maybe has a mental health issue and a substance abuse issue, you've doubled your problem there. And I'm all about or all for a mental health team and using professionals within our community to help us with those problems. But we have to look at the big picture there of what can we do. There's a lot of things we can do, but as a sheriff's office, we cover 470 some square miles. And on a good evening, we work with a minimum of 5 deputies on the road. So if we're involved in a couple of different incidents, how do we deal with those? And I'll agree with Jay. People call us to deal with all of their problems, and that's fine. But some of the problems we're not trained as well as we should be. So if we have a mental health crisis with someone, say down in the southeast part of the county, we have to be able to get there to try and level that situation off, and then we're waiting on a mental health professional to get there. That's where I think that lag happens once in a while, or can happen, is the response time of your mental health professionals coming to help us in the county. In the city, it's a little bit different. Your response time is a lot quicker. But if you take right now, if somebody had to respond to a remote part of our county for someone who's in crisis, that's where we have to make sure we have our officers as best trained we can to help level that situation out until that person gets there. And time sometimes isn't always on your side when someone's in crisis either.
Thank you. I apologize for getting out of sequence here a couple times, but at this point, we'll go back to our candidates in the original order with Doug, Jay, and then Jean to give up the 2 minutes of a closing statement. If there's any time left after that, we'll have some questions from the floor. So please go ahead, Doug.
I want to thank everybody for their time today, and I appreciate everyone wanting to be informed on what's going on with the sheriff's office and the sheriff's election. And it's kind of an unprecedented time. I've been in the sheriff's office 33 years and never seen this type of situation. And I think it's great. I think the more involvement there is, the better it is. I'm just going to close with about, as a sheriff, I want to control the things or work with the things and fix the things that a sheriff can fix. And there's a lot of things that, I can offer solutions on, but I can't necessarily fix as a sheriff. But, having the right people come to the table when it depends on what the problem is a big issue. You have to have a diverse group from across your community to help deal with the different problems we currently have and the problems we will have in the future. There will be future problems we're going to have to deal with. So having the right people at the table, a wide variety of people from across the county, across the city with different backgrounds and everything else is important. So that's what we have to do as a sheriff, is help to fix those problems and fix the problems that you can deal with. Can you be part of the solution for other problems? Yes, but I want to focus on the problems that I can fix as the sheriff and work with the other groups to help them fix the other problems. I think sometimes that gets forgotten about what the sheriff's duties really are. So I thank everybody for their time.
Thank you. Jay?
Okay, thank you. And again, yes, thank you very much for spending the last hour with us. I hope you've learned a little bit and maybe even developed some new questions, because we love the harder the question, the better. I think we can all agree it's time for change. I mean, nobody will ever say something good came out of the death of a human being, but George Floyd has offered us an opportunity to pivot this entire system on its heel and move it in a new direction. I feel like I'm that progressive leadership to do that. And while I do agree with Captain Woods that we have a lane and we have to stay in our lane, I do feel like as well, though, I can use my position as sheriff, as well as my privilege as a white male, to start and be the voice for those who who are not afforded the same luxuries that I have been because of who I am, where I come from, and what I look like. I think that we can really, if we can get with the pillars of the community and the stakeholders, I think it's time for us to look at a community supported system that is funded with our dollars to start addressing these social problems. Get an agency that's going to work on drug rehabilitation, that's going to work on housing, domestic violence, mental health, have the professionals, the experts in those fields come together and not have to worry about raising money to keep their nonprofit going. Let's get them the funding and the support that they need, because this county is clearly willing to spend $30 million on a jail, so we have money. And let's start funding these programs. Let's not defund the police. Let's refund social programs. So I feel like while I would not have that say, I don't have a say in that, and I certainly wouldn't be in charge of that agency, nor would I want to be, because I'm not an expert. But I know that we have the experts to do it, and we have the money to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize to Clark Reals because on his screen it shows up as Gene, which is the name of the guy running, Gene Flory, for sheriff. But Clark, let's have your closing comments, please.
Thank you. It's time for a change in Douglas County. Dale Flory is running for sheriff of Douglas County. Dale is a nearly 24-year veteran of the Douglas County Sheriff's Office, having served in each of the 5 major divisions. Dale has appointed me, Lieutenant Clark Riles, a 28-year veteran of the Sheriff's Office, to serve as his undersheriff if elected. Dale recognizes that the leadership of law enforcement is larger than one single issue, and he wants to lead the change in how our community engages with those that are hired to protect and serve. Dale wants the people of Douglas County to have a voice and a seat at the table in how law enforcement engages with those in need. Vote for a change on August 4th. Vote Dale Flory for Douglas County Sheriff. Thank you.
And thank you, Clark. We're very close to our normal time to end our regular program, and I'll do so. And if Amanda could act as our person to switch around, if you want to stick around for another 8 or 10 minutes, are there any questions that you'd like to ask? Please raise your hand and we'll unmute you. I'm going to switch screen. Barbara goes first and then Paul.
Well, thank you very much for coming and talking with us. I think we need to know about use of force. And it seems like there's not enough attention given to the public. The public should have some ability to understand what happened in this situation if it's a use of force, and there should be some oversight of the whole business. So what do you think about that?
Doug first, and then Jay.
I think I agree with you, Ms. Johnston. We have to have the community needs a better understanding of what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why we're doing it. You know, we have a program. We have a Citizens Academy. That would be a basic start for just general citizens to understand what's going on with the sheriff's office. You get to see the upfront, firsthand, the things we use or the tools we use when such things happen. Do we need some sort of a citizens review board? Yes, we very much do need a citizens review board. You have to have a broad spectrum of people from across the community that want to serve on a board similar to that, and that are willing to be trained on how things go or how things work, and then to help us with those situations, because that's really who we're serving as the public, and we need the public's input on all these issues. So to have a citizens review board, some citizens oversight is definitely important, even if it's, something as simple as just watching videos of what's going on when our deputies are involved in car stops or in an incident where use of force happens. Those things, I think, are very important for the citizens or a review board to see and to offer some insight on those things.
Thank you. Jay?
Yeah, and great question, Ms. Johnston. I think, so the Sheriff's Office currently has one of the most extensive use of force policies that I've even heard about. I mean, it's upwards, if you add all of the different facets, it's upwards around 35 pages. So it's a huge amount of information that we have to absorb and be ready to use. But also I'll echo Captain Woods in that the Citizens Review Board is something that I've been talking about since the beginning, and we need to have the situation where our citizens can come in and look at citizen complaints, low-level use of force situations, but also, as he talked about, using it for best practices. Like maybe we have a use of force in a housing unit in the jail, and we take that video to them, and everything is well within policy. However, we need to show it to these folks and let them look at it and say, hey, is this what you expect from us? Is this practice what you expect and want to see out of us? And if it's not, let's talk about, do we change our practice or do we change our policy? So I think there's a lot of things, but yeah, Captain Simmons, my undersheriff, actually developed that Citizens Academy. And I think I would recommend it to anybody of any age to come in and see. We will let you drive our cars. We will let you wrestle with our officers. We will show you every inch of our buildings because we are so proud of what we do and how we do it. We want people to come in and see what we do and understand. So, and I agree, education and understanding is the key to having forming your opinion and understanding of what it is we do.
Thank you. Gene, I should say Clark.
Yeah, we have a use of force policy that's pretty detailed, kind of gives the steps when use of force can be used. Yeah, this is part of the transparency that Dale has talked about from the beginning. He's wanting to implement the body cams. He wants to take appropriate action if an officer dishonors a badge, and he fully supports the National Police Misconduct Database. We want to make sure our deputies and staff are accountable for their actions. Make sure that they're not instigating the problem, making it worse, and just hold people accountable for what they do. We're also looking into the Citizen Review Board to where they can sit down and have a seat at our table and go over some of these use of force and tell what we did, if it was appropriate or too much, and that way they have a voice. The Citizen Academy is a great opportunity, like Jay said, to come in and learn what we do in our agency. We've had people go through that academy, Citizen Academy, who didn't like law enforcement or was kind of on the fence about law enforcement and what we did. And they go through our academy and they've done a 180-degree turnaround to where they fully support us. So that's a great opportunity for the public to come in and see what we do.
Thank you. Paul Linus, you had a hand up?
Yes, first of all, I want to thank the participants, and I'm really encouraged. I think we've got 3 very well qualified and experienced candidates. This question probably should start with Jay Armbruster, since he brought it up. Is it feasible for the defunding, which is a very unfortunate term because it makes it an instant political football, for the shifting of funds to be balanced by shifting of responsibilities, or is that a progressive pipe dream?
I think a progressive pipe dream is probably a very good term. I think while I consider myself very progressive, I don't agree with the term of defunding the police. I absolutely agree with the premise, but I feel like, especially from the sheriff's office perspective, is that our $15.8 million budget is almost 80 some odd % staffing, and so what I would say is that if we can create some sort of a social community supported system, and we can begin to lower our jail population through these programs, I have no problem reallocating staff and money into these programs once I no longer have to spend it on the housing and the mental health and everything of the people within our facility. But until we get to that point, I'm not willing to just sweep my money away and start laying people off and cutting our non-statutorily required programs, which would be, we would become a jail only, because that's the only thing statutorily, that and civil process. If they take our money, those are the only two things we'll have. You'll no longer have our reentry programs. We'll no longer have our patrol would be cut almost to nothing. Our courtroom security would have to be cut. Our investigations divisions would have to be cut. All the things that we're not statutorily required would be the first things that would have to be cut if we don't have the funding. So I agree that it is a bit of a pipe dream, and in the fact that we can actually do this, but I feel like there is a way to slow move and transition into a new system that allows for both, I guess. I hope that answers your question, Paul.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to respond to that? Doug, I think I saw your hand first, Doug.
So just to echo some of those things also, I don't like the term defunding the police either, because as we've learned today, the majority of our budget goes to personnel members. And understanding, like at the jail, there's a minimum staffing number we have to have for our shifts. And if that's 10, 11, 12 people, that's to keep the inmates safe and secure, as well as the staff that's working there. And you reiterate what Jay said. Do we cut out our patrol division then? Do we cut out our investigations? As we all know here, the sheriff's office is required to serve civil process warrants and have a jail. They're not required to have a patrol division. They're not required to investigate crimes and such things like that. So where do we cut that money at? Those are the easy cuts. Do we cut our reentry program out of our jail budget because it's not a luxury, it's a necessity, but we have to look at all these different areas. Where are we going to cut this money at? If you say you're going to cut 50% of our budget out, that means we get rid of at least 50% of our employees when we start cutting different programs. So I agree. I think it's a progressive pipe dream. Yes. Are there things we can do to help this situation as a sheriff? Yes. But when you start talking about defunding the police, I think you start talking about, okay, the deputies aren't going to be able to respond to calls in the county. We're not going to be able to, investigate crimes that happen in the county. These are all far-reaching events that will occur when we start cutting the budget. So we have to look at that with a big microscope of how, if we're going to cut money, where do we cut the money at? I am not in favor of cutting any money from the sheriff's office. Because I think we do a really good job with the money we have. Would we like to have more money in our budget to do more things? Yes, but that money is awarded to us by the county commissioners. We submit a budget. They either agree with what we submit, or they cut or they add money. So that's where our budget comes from. And we have to really look at, if we're going to cut money, where are we going to cut that money from, and who's going to be affected when we cut that money?
Thank you. Clark?
Yes. The word that's being used is defunding police, and I totally disagree with it. And to echo some of the things that's already been said, we're going to lose programs that we definitely need. And the citizens of Douglas County deserve to have the best top-notch law enforcement officers out there serving their community. And that comes with things we already have in place as far as the training and all of our programs. We also have we also have to make sure we put the right and have the best officers out there. And again, that comes with the funding and the programs that we already have. So we have the citizens have the right to have the best deputies out there, and we have the right to be the best officers out there. And you start taking away funding, and those things are going to diminish. And hopefully that won't ever happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we've bumped up against our mandatory closing time. I'm sorry for questions we were not able to get answered. Let's all have a silent round of applause for these great candidates. Let's remember to vote on August 4th, or mail your ballot in 2 days in advance. Thanks, everyone, and stay tuned, or I should say, tune in again at 11 o'clock for our worship service. Thank you all and have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.